now talking about families, and actually that's the title of the book. I will not mainly talk about families. I will talk about children, because the reason why we think that families might be important structures for value and moral formation is because in the family, the first years of life, the child gets a lot of input that might be relevant for later on. And many psychologists and psychoanalysts have shown us why. Now, I would like to contribute that by giving you some examples that explain how early the influences, social influences of the family have an impact on children's moral development. I start with a picture of a brain. And this brain has three different color schemes there. They are all related to what we call executive control. So this is our control center in the brain that helps us to guide our behavior and to monitor our behavior. And of these three parts of the brain, this one here is specifically marked. And this has a good reason, because it is one that matures very early. I show it to you here. This is a graph showing the brain of a 4-year-old. And as you can see, the frontal cortex, so everything that is relevant for higher cognition, is not yet matured very much. As you can see that the color is still not blue, it's more reddish and yellow. But there's a specific part of this brain that is already pretty blue. And that's the orbital frontal cortex. And this orbital frontal cortex that matures very early in life is highly relevant for inhibition, a very important ability that we have that allows us to first think about the things we do before we do them, for example. Values, which is what the topic of this whole group here is, and social behavior. And of course, values and social behavior go hand in hand. So we have indication from brain research that parts of the brain mature very early, in the early 3 to 4 years of life, that have to do with moral and value formation. And this is typically the time where the children spend most of the time in the family. Okay, now let's start with a newborn and think about it a little bit. So a baby comes to this world, a new human being, and it has very basic needs. And if these needs are not met, it will die. And to these needs don't only belong needs for nurturing or in terms of getting food or milk, it's also for getting care, social care, of being loved by someone, being really appreciated and recognized as someone who deserves being well treated. And if you don't get this experience, you get everything else, but you don't get this experience, you will also die. That has been shown very early by Mark Spitz, and later on, multiple times, and your brain will get damaged. So what you really need as an infant is someone who takes care of you. And we are actually quite prepared to do that. So nature has endowed us with certain abilities and competences that help us to take care of little babies. Everyone would realize and also respond to a crying baby. Nobody would let it lie in the corner. Every one of us would go and help the baby and put it up, take it to your arms and say something calm. And all this does not need to be taught. You just know it. That's part of our biological competences that we have. Of course, in some human beings, these basic and natural tendencies have been overshadowed by other things that they later on in their life experienced, and therefore they're not as capable of doing that as they used to be before these experiences. Anyway, so the baby comes with his needs, and we have the competences to help the baby. And based on this kind of experience that we have in exchange with the baby forms something that is essential for all the life, which is trust. And this basic trust, you can see that the baby likes to turn to the person who took care of him or her, and also that the baby shows clear preference for being with the person that treated them well. That's called attachment and stranger anxiety. And you can observe this in infants as early as 7 months of age. So in the first 6 months, they have already learned whom to trust, and they want to stay with a person whom they can trust, because they are completely dependent and this person provides what they need. Usually this is the family, but it could be someone else. It is somebody taking care, and that's the most important thing. Now, in my research, I'm very interested in how social cues and social trust also leads learning about the world. So not only in the dyadic interaction, but also how other things in the world are perceived. And when we look at objects, for example, we have done EEG studies measuring babies' brain waves to see what goes on in there, to how the baby perceives objects being looked at in different ways. So if someone looks frightened at an object or highly astonished or friendly and positively surprised, this has an effect on how the baby processes the object, and the baby is more likely to process the object very well when the person has looked at it with fear. So the baby takes another person as an indicator for what shall I better not approach and where can I go. And you can also see this in everyday behavior by looking at something that is called social referencing or emotional referencing. This means that babies here about 10, 11 months of age, before they do something, they first check back with their parent or caregiver, am I allowed to do this? Is this okay? Can I trust this person and go and approach this person? And this already shows you that trust is so essential and that it guides us through the world. And if we don't have this basic trust, then we have a problem to deal with the world. So this is a picture of me and my daughter 30 years ago. She's now also writing her PhD in psychology, so a little larger now. And why I put it in is because we as adults, we show the babies and slightly older children a lot about the world, and they learn a lot from us. And since they have developed trust to us, they follow our attention, and they learn to look at things and internalize the way that we look at things within themselves. And then they also look at the things the way that we do. That happens very early, but in the second year of life already, language comes into play, and then we get into exchange about these things and the evaluation of things. So a child might then ask, why do you think the wolf is a bad animal in one of the fairy tales, for example? So the baby would ask back, the child would ask back, and we get into conversations about these values. Now here I wanted to show you a video which unfortunately doesn't work, so I have to explain the study. This is one about moral development in early infancy. And here the babies, they're 5 months old, they see like a little box, and they see 2 puppets, and then a third puppy comes and tries to open the lid of the box. And then one of the 2 other actors in the scene either help the one who tries to open the box, or they jump on the box and try to hinder them. And later on, if you then offer the baby the 2 protagonists, here this one, and ask them which one they want, they will for sure go for the one who has been the helper before. So here we see that prosocial perception of other actors, people who act prosocially, not only towards me, but also towards third people, that this is encoded and memorized and makes preferences. And that was taken as one example for very, very early indication of moral development, even in the first year of life when you don't talk about moral at all. Now, babies observe a lot, and this observation, and small children also, this observation helps them to know how they should behave towards others. And we we talk on the one hand about pro-social and on the other hand about antisocial behavior. So pro-social behavior would be something like helping another person, but in order to be able to help, you need to recognize the intention of the other person, which is not easy. You need some knowledge about what the person might want to do, and you need to think about the intentions of the other person, and then you need to be motivated to help this other person. So if this other person has behaved badly before towards the third one, you might not want to help him, right? And otherwise, if you see within a family, for example, but only for example, that people help each other and are friendly with each other, then you will automatically adopt the same attitude and try to behave in a similar way. And this is also true for cooperation. When you want to build something, even a small tower in a toy game with another child, you learn that you need to negotiate about how to do it. And that's something new, and that's what children usually learn in kindergarten, because not many families have many children at home. This used to be different, so the siblings would teach each other, but very often if we have families that have only one child, the only chance to learn these things, like helping and cooperation, is then outside the family. For example, in a daycare center that has a lot of good role models, if it has. Okay, now let's talk about imitation, observational learning. I mentioned that children are really extremely good imitators from birth on. Even if you have a newborn and you stick your tongue, you will see that a moment later the newborn might also stick out the tongue. And this is not to say, I don't like you. This is to say, I am like you. I am like you. Yeah? So children do a lot to show, I want to be like you, I am like you. And gestures, utterances, actions with objects, all this we can also already see in imitation in 7-month-olds. And even complex behaviors with different action scenes that are required, 12-month-olds copy. So here we're all talking about infancy. This is usually the time where the baby is in the family or with the caregivers. Then something new occurs. It's called rational imitation. It means that I'm not copying anything you show me, but only if I think you have a specific purpose to do it that way and not another. Yeah? But for trusted people, I assume that you have a purpose. So I copy you, but not another person who does the same. So the children start to become selective. Whom should I copy? And this also has to do a lot with trust, whom I copy. And what we now study quite extensively is something you can observe in 3 to 4-year-olds. It's called over-imitation. And this means my trust is so great in you that even if I think you're doing absolute nonsense, I will copy you. Yeah? And this is something unique among humans. You don't find this to the same extent in great apes, for example. Humans are extremely motivated to copy others, and this is the case for 4 to 5-year-olds in extreme. Okay, now I have videos for you because I want to show you how from copying others, norms start to develop. In the videos that I will show you, there has been a flat form, and one person with a puppet in her hands plays the puppet, and an experimenter shows the child, if you want to get this object from this side of the platform to the other side, you need to use this tool, and you do this, right? I'm now paraphrasing. The experimenter does not say it that way. The experimenter just demonstrated it that way and calls it Dachsen, which is a fantasy name. Yeah? And now the child sees, after having been instructed that way, the following scene. So another person does something else to get the yellow block to the other side and says, oops, that's not Dachsen. I should not do it that way. And once the child has seen that, she sees another person coming and playing with a puppet and doing the same thing. Now I'm going to do Dachsen, This is how I'm duxing. Watch. And unfortunately, you don't have tone, but that's not how duxing goes. So he's trying to defend now what he has just learned. He tells the other person, don't do that. So maybe you know the situation from when you're standing at a traffic light and you want to go over the street in red, it's turning red, then your young children, 5 to 6 year olds, they will tell you what is okay and what is not okay. They have learned it and they're defending their norms against others. So that's when the values that we get from our trusted people transmit to norms and are defended in front of others as a norm. Okay. Now, very often the family is seen as the holy place where all the good stuff comes from, but if you think about a child that may just have this context, and the parents maybe fight about education, for example, yeah, about values, and the child watches this, the child gets very confused because there are two people I trust, and all of a sudden they argue for different norms. What am I supposed to do in this situation? That's undermining trust, basically. How are parents handling differences in their values is very important. If we do it well, if we discuss things well in front of the child knows how to deal with discrepancies in values. But if we don't, then the child has no clue what to do. And also, the child experiences situations with siblings, for example, where there is a norm, the parents set the norm, but this is not always kept. And how are parents then dealing with the one who does not follow the norm is also something that they carefully watch and observe and internalize and keep it for later for their moral and personality development. So it's not only important to be a good example, it's extremely important to show children how to deal what happens with situations when the norm is somehow not kept. Okay, just 2 to 3 slides more. When the child becomes older, it knows that the society also expects something from the child. And when we have migrant families, for example, and people have been socialized in one system and then come to a different system, and all of a sudden the rules change, then that's a real challenge for children, a big challenge. And what we do is we think about how we can teach them the new norms, but we don't think about how we can make them think about the different norms and how we can negotiate about them, even though that's much more important than saying, no, this is not how it's being done, it's done that way. Okay, so the child wants to know who is expecting what from me, and it learns, okay, different groups have different norms, but how not to become confused in this situation? Well, the only way to do it is to, then we also have differences between generations. Whoever has teenagers knows about this, so I don't need to tell you more about it. But each time has its own norms and values, and you need to negotiate them with your parents. And again, it's most important how you do it. Not that you push through, but how you do it. And finally, now we're coming to university, where I also end my talk. Becoming aware of the plurality and thinking about how to deal with plurality of norms is, in my view, the most important challenge that we are facing today, and that we also try to address in this wonderful series of books. So this is basically what we end up with, but even at that time, it's most important what you have learned in the early years. So keep in mind, that's the time where the most important things and the basic trust and the basic fundament of values and norms develop. Yep, all other circles and society and media and so on, they come around later. But very often we're just thinking about adults. Let's keep the children also in mind, because that's the basis for everything else. Thank you.